Hello, a very good evening to you. Welcome to the second night of the Forge election debates. Tonight, four more sets of candidates for the elected officer roles are going to go head to head in some live debates. Tonight, we have candidates for the sports officer, activities officer, international students officer, and the women's officer all going head to head. Let me tell you a little bit about how tonight's going to run. We're starting off here in the studio. In a moment, we'll go over to Sama in the SU gallery, who's with the first set of candidates now. And there'll be about half an hour's worth of debate. And what we'll do then is cut back to the studio. We'll have about 5 minutes of analysis, and then we will rinse and repeat that procedure until we've been through all of the sets of candidates. But before we do cut to Sama, let me introduce you to David and Tanzi. They're my pundits for the sports officer debate tonight. Guys, what are you looking forward to today?
Well, I think this sports officer debate in particular is going to be very interesting because it's just one-on-one. There's only two people running for this role. So that means you've got nowhere to hide. You've got sort of no room to manoeuvre, hiding away amongst the debate. You've got to be right in the middle of it and challenge your opponent as to why you think your policies are more effective than the other. So I think it's going to be a real interesting psychological battle.
And in terms of policies, what are you looking to see explained, especially tonight in this debate?
Well, I think personally, just a few more sort of explanations on the financial side of things. So in sport, a lot of it is getting more funding for university sports within Sheffield. And whilst that is a nice idea, where is that money going to come from? There's a lot of money that's put in a lot of different places by the university. How are you going to persuade them to give you the funds that you need?
Yeah, I think that'll be really interesting as well. And Tanzi, how about you? What are you looking forward to?
We're looking forward to hear a very clear discussion between where the funding going to come from, and we're expecting the candidates to back them up with some stats and show us clearly how they're going to get the funds and show their basically their understanding towards the university funding and how the club sports going to get this money from. So except from money, we're going to talk about a lot of other issues as well, like inclusivity in sports and also athletes and players' welfare and so on. So yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Exciting stuff, lots to be explained. So with that, let's go over to Sama in the gallery.
Hello and welcome back to your SU gallery. This is the election nights number 2, and here I am joined with your potential sports officers. We have Matt here and we also have Jordan. How are you guys feeling?
Really good, really good. Oh.
Yeah, really good.
Love to hear that. Okay, so we're going to start with the first question. So, what are the issues of inclusivity in sport and how do you seek to implement a solution? Matt?
For me, the biggest barrier to sport operates on a financial level because it's the most universal of the barriers. I'm not by any stretch of the imagination saying there aren't individual specific barriers, but funding is a huge issue, particularly in university sport. That's something I've always looked to try and break down over the last 2 years, especially, and it's something I want to go one further to break down as well.
Thank you. Jordan?
Yeah, I'd mirror that. Funding is dire at the moment at university and across universities across the country. I think in terms of inclusion, it's kind of been backed on a campaign at the moment of 3 representative campaigns, This Girl Can, Pride in Sport, and Disability in Sport. And while they have the best of intentions, I mean, on the outset, it ignores international students, mature students, BME students' participation in sport. So I think we need to kind of stop talking about creating campaigns and make sport accessible for everybody in Sheffield. And yeah.
Thank you. So you've both touched on funding and money. Have you spoken to Greg Unwin and Sports Sheffield about the difficulties they're facing in trying to obtain more funding every year? And what would you do anything different to what Sports Sheffield have been campaigning for years already? Jordan?
Yeah, I've had plenty of conversations with Greg, and it's clearly not a great situation. Whoever does become elected from this candidacy, obviously in the first quarter, that's when the budget is decided by the university. So we kind of subsume the position and we work with whatever we have. So I can't tell you exactly how much money is going to be there and what we can do with it. But clearly there's been a narrative by board members, the Vice-Chancellor, of, you know, we've won varsity 7 years in a row, things are going great, why should we change the status quo? But I think it's got to the point now where our students participating in sport are putting themselves in harm's way. And it's just time for change.
How are they putting themselves in harm's way?
So currently, apart from a handful of clubs, most sports teams actually have to train themselves. So I've been speaking to a lot of sports teams on the concourse and around the university, and when clubs are actually watching YouTube videos and we're competing at some of the highest levels, I can't stress this enough, the highest levels of sport at university sport across the country. So when you're watching YouTube videos and this is how you're learning how to play sports, and then you're getting injured and there's no physiotherapy there, and there's not this continuation of looking after our students in sport, then this is something that needs to be tackled. And yeah, my main policies on physical health really get to the root of this.
Thank you. Matt, to you, the same question about speaking to Greg Unwin and Sports Sheffield. And also, what is your opinion on sports students being in harm's way?
So, yes, I've spoken heavily and worked with Greg Unwin, club sport manager, the last couple of years. But his hands are very tied. He's given a budget. He asks for his budget, and from there he has to work. I've worked also with the director of sport, Andy Cox, who is a much more key relationship to have here. So part of the reason is that senior management in the university are unsusceptible to funding increases, but also it's necessary to note we haven't asked for it. There hasn't been a proposal until this year to say, can we have increased funding for club sport? We seem to have been in a position where we're kind of scared to take the bold step and scared to hear no as an answer. Now, there was a case there of raising the profile of sport because sport needed its profile raising for the issues you've outlined. But we hadn't asked until this year. This year is the first year we've put in 6 or 7 years an application to say, can we have more money for club sports? In terms of, and I'd quite like to ask on your physiotherapy and
sure, go
coaching policy, if possible. So, a level on average, this comes from Greg himself as a statistic. On average, a level 2 qualified coach, which I noted was something you wanted across all clubs, costs £25 an hour.
Right.
Now, for a club training 5 hours a week, which is a very average amount, £125 a week, that in total across 58 clubs is £144,000. Where does that come from?
Right. So I think it's obviously a trial period if I was going to be elected, but also Sheffield Hallam University, doing my bit of research, actually have physiotherapy degrees. So including those students and actually working with the other Sheffield Hallam officer and creating physiotherapy. I mean, I understand concerns about money, but it's got to the point where there's no viable option to do else.
But on the coaches.
Okay, the coaches links in my the physiotherapy and the coaching. They're one of the same, really. So this isn't providing coaches. Maybe it's got lost in my manifesto a bit because I think it's been framed as in it would be permanent coaches for all sports teams, and it's not. It's about providing a few key hours at the start of every year by professional athletes in their respective sport, which is going to be relatively inexpensive, and then teaching the techniques to every sports club so that they're not going to be injuring themselves. In my sports club, in volleyball, I joined the club last year, and now I teach social sport, I coach my team, and I'm not qualified to do that. So when we're competing at the highest levels and we've got Sports Sheffield staff and everyone telling us this is a great thing, but there's no infrastructure, there's no care, there's no support, there's no help there, then money shouldn't be a barrier. It clearly is, but there are ways to get around it with the physiotherapy programs in Hallam.
Definitely agree entirely that clubs should be coached by qualified coaches. Just all I would add is there is currently a pot of money to qualify current students to say, okay, so I've benefited from that myself with the university, paying for my level 1 water polo qualification course. If for students to then give back to university, I think it's really poorly advertised, but it's a policy that wouldn't cost £144,000.
Okay, so a question to both of you is, how would you make sure that the women's sports teams would be recognised just as much as the men's sports teams?
Yeah, could I lead this one?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think it's really important that women are heard, and I think at the moment they are overlooked in sport. I know this year at varsity, I'm not sure if it's happened before, the women's football will be going second, and I think that's a great step. But at the same time, there's so much more that we can be doing. One of my key policies is actually to create a women's only sports award. Until equality is achieved, I think there's so much more that we can do to help women and support them. And yeah, sorry, I don't know if there's anything you want to add on this, Matt, but I think it's a key crucial policy of mine to really celebrate the achievements and hard work of women. And I did notice on your manifesto it was more practical stuff and less so about inclusions and recognition. So wondered why.
So coming to the original question, I agree. It's fantastic that women's football is the football final this year. That's fantastic. And while there's also a lot of politics to the rugby union at this year's varsity, it's great to see that women's rugby is very likely to headline as the headline sports park event. That's fantastic to see an endorsing club doing so well. But I would like to come to your Women in Sports Awards because there are three major individual awards given out at the Sports Awards. There's a Club Sport Member of the Year award, there's the Outstanding Contribution award, and there's the Outstanding Achievement award. The last 6 winners of those, 5 of them have been female. That's fantastic. That's a huge stage where 4,000, not 4,000, that's a huge sports award, where Club Sport members go to the Sports Awards and celebrate the achievements. Now, with the women's in sport, with the greatest intention in the world, I see entirely why you've done it. That's taking away from the main stage that these women are currently being celebrated on, which is fantastic. Not to mention the fact that a sports awards event costs £22,000 to run. That's what I'd add to that. But in terms of my own inclusions policy, I entirely back the campaigns that are run by Sports Committee and run by the Sports Officer currently. The panel events have been incredibly insightful. I've been at Pride in Sport, I've been at This Girl Can, and I was on the panel for Movember sharing my story about mental health. It was fantastic. The inclusivity around that, the awareness raised is phenomenal, and I would completely carry on with that.
Oh, I fully respect that you're now saying this now. This is the first time I've heard about it. I think in terms of the inclusion, just following on from my policies, I actually want to make the representative campaigns have representative people from BME, Pride and Sport, and actually create a scheme where they can go in and speak to clubs that there's still stereotypes in sports. It took me 3 years as an LGBT man, and I'm a confident guy, to actually feel like I could play sports at university. And yes, the panel talks are great, but it gets to the point where what's happening from it? Like, we're talking, but how are we making things more inclusive? That's when does real change enact, basically?
Thank you. If you are elected as sports officer, what campaign ideas would you have to promote inclusivity, such as This Girl Can has been previously? So what would you both suggest?
Well, sorry, I've just kind of touched on that previously. So it would be creating a scheme and having people who are representatives from representative groups who are proud in sport and not only are going to work with each individual clubs and have that working relationship, because at the moment it is just clubs nominating a member to go to these panel events, but actually it's about education. It's about going into the community, the wider community of Sheffield, and actually teaching kids that sport is a homogenous, it's a language that we all get behind. Sport doesn't discriminate, people discriminate. So it's going into schools and it's about teaching these young kids that sport is for everyone and sport is a right for everyone.
Thank you, Matt.
I would fully get behind the panel talks. I would fully get behind the campaigns run. I appreciate there are missing demographics from that as a result of timetable constraints, and I would run them again. But I also think we say sport doesn't discriminate. A lack of funding also doesn't discriminate in any way. So one policy I want to bring in is my social sport season ticket, which decreases accessibility barriers to social sport, which is the very way into sport through participation. The foundations of sport come through that. So I would want the ability for students to buy a social sports season ticket at the start of the year, and therefore there's not the continual process of having to go on and pay week by week. But in doing so as well, I would also want to simultaneously bring in a provision to say disadvantaged students, bursary receiving students, this social sports scheme is funded, this social sports scheme is available to you, and participation is not discriminated against.
Sorry, am I able just to comment on that? I did see that policy. I think it's a great policy, but I think it ignores the finances that smaller and medium-sized clubs actually rely on social sport by just having this pass that's obviously lowering the cost for students. But what about the money that's feeding back into the clubs?
In terms of social sport, I don't mean beginner sessions run by the clubs. I don't mean the lower teams in clubs. I mean the University of Sport Sheffield social sport programme, which runs as a separate entity.
So going back to your social sport ticket, I have a question about that. Why is it necessary when social sport is already mostly free for resident life holders and fairly affordable for everyone else? And in logistics, how much would it cost?
So it's not free for Residence Life owners. This year is the first year that Residence Life owners have had to pay to be part. Residence Life members, have had to pay for access to social sport, but also because less significant barriers to entry at participation level can seem very daunting, can seem a lot more daunting than they actually are. And a £2.50 a week fee for someone wanting to do sport 3 times a week, which is the government recommended amount, that quickly adds up. Suddenly you're on £7.50 a week. Now, the beauty of the social sport season ticket system is that there will be people who buy it, don't particularly use it, and therefore the programme balances out in that sense. Calculating that is something I would want to do very early into the job, in preparation for September for students coming in. I can't give you an exact figure on that now.
Thank you. Going to you, Jordan. What is the issue with HEAR recognition, and what are you going to do to tackle it?
Sure, yeah. So the HEAR report at the moment, for anyone that doesn't know, Higher Education Achievement Report, doesn't recognise, it only recognises committee members. So I think this ignores kind of the hard work. I'm sure we can all in sports recognise that there are people who aren't on committee who do an incredible amount for our sports clubs. And I think, so apart from not recognising them, and they should, it's also about increasing participation in sport. Yes, we have 4,500 members in club sport at the moment, but what about the other 25,000 members at university? In a hyper-competitive education environment like a university, a lot of people care about education and getting that formal recognition. So having that HEAR recognition for all students participating in sport, I think would be a really good way. A few years ago, when I was studying abroad, they actually have credits for participating in sport, and it's actually recognised by the university. So this is a proven way to increase participation in sport. It's a no-brainer for me.
Thank you. Going to you, Matt. You said that you want to introduce a long-term transport solution for Norton. What would this be, and how would this work? And additionally, where would the funding and transportation come from?
So as context for this, on the Norton project, and this is an issue that all external venues face, but was highlighted to me by the Norton project. In the first year, the university paid for all transport to training sessions and matches at Norton. Now, this was never covered for external venues. Now clubs receive a small percentage. So they rely heavily on car drivers. They rely heavily on making their own way for late training sessions in the dark. So this is an absolutely essential thing that needs sorting for student welfare and for access to sport. Now, in terms of costing, it's a case of working with transport providers. It's a case of working with transport providers, the University Sport Sheffield, because for me, the current list of approved transport providers in Sheffield means that that they're on the list, they can increase their price. And that's something I would want to lobby to work. But I want this to work alongside lobbying the university around club sport funding, straight to the Vice-Chancellor, Cohen Lamberts, straight to the Head of Education, Wim Morgan, to say, look, sport needs to be on the radar because this works well with academia. The two shouldn't be competing for funding. Sport and academia work together. The two move along together.
What's your opinion on that?
Yeah. While I fully appreciate great policy, transport subsidies to Norton, it completely ignores all the other venues around Sheffield that students do go to and clubs go to. So how are you, if you can't do cost effect properly for Norton, how are you going to make sure that all those other clubs are recognised within that policy?
So there's a reason clubs have to train all over Sheffield, and that's because Goodwin as a facility is really, really, and I can't stress this enough, really poor. Okay, there are currently 3 years ago plans were drawn up to upgrade Goodwin. There was meant to be an extra sports hall added. It was meant to be built up all the way up to Northumberland Road. An extra swimming pool, a new swimming pool, new bigger gym, so that sport wasn't at capacity. And that was all planning permission gained, contracted, and then they decided to scrap the plan. This plan's got scrapped, so there's currently no plans to upgrade Goodwin until 2040 because of the government's priorities. You'll know yourself training there. Holes in the floor in the S&C room when you're throwing some steel around. The gym's always full. The netball club competing alongside 6, 7, 8, 9 other teams that need to play in sports halls alongside social sport. Goodwin's at capacity. capacity. That's why clubs are training external venues. So my transport policy wouldn't just be for Norton. I should have clarified that better. It's for all external venues. I was at gymnastics last night in Dronfield, a half-hour drive 4 times a week to go and train. It's ridiculous that students are having to commit so much to represent the university, to be walking billboards for the university's kit.
What 3 things would you both improve about Goodwin, Jordan?
Well, clearly needs more funding, needs more space. I can't express, like Matt said, enough. As a team in volleyball, I don't ever train there. So actually, to be part of a sport club, I think I trained there once or twice, maybe last year. I don't know what can be done about Goodwin. Like Matt said, it's beyond capacity. We need to start building. We need infrastructure. With a new social science building that's gone up, I think a lot of people were expecting maybe that Goodwin was expanding there. Like making Goodwin better has been on the cards for 10 years now, and nothing's happening. So it's a case of actually taking it to the appropriate members, which I think me and Matt are both on board with, and actually saying, because at the moment you go and you speak to people and it's very much, yes, we agree, this is an issue. And it's like, great, I'm speaking to a yes man or a yes woman, and what are we doing about this? Well, there's nothing we can do about this. So I don't really know specifically what 3 things internally I would make better, but expand the facilities.
Specifically, I would lobby to put the Goodwin upgrade plans from 3 years ago back on the table. It needs another sports hall, that's at capacity. It needs a bigger gym, that's at capacity. It needs a better swimming pool. And there's a commercial argument for that as well. This isn't a case of kicking and screaming and saying, give us more money, give us more facilities. This is a case of saying, build a sufficient swimming pool, bring in another sports hall, and your local clubs will come in. In swimming particularly, there's huge competition for Ponds Forge International Aquatic Centre in the city centre, because clubs around Sheffield and the region, there's clubs coming in from everywhere. Chesterfield Swimming Club are training there, City of Sheffield, Sheffield City, University, Hallam, and you're all competing with a common goal of wanting to compete over the same pool time. There's a business case there that out of hours, that's rented out. That subsidises sport for students. And there we go. We're suddenly, nobody's going to come in at Goodwin and want to train there as an external club. We've got a business case.
Thank you so much. A question for you, Jordan.
Sure.
Can you outline your plan for establishing effective physio programs across Sports Sheffield venues? Have you checked that there are facilities in place across all venues for such a program to take place?
Yeah, so I mean, the main 2 venues that will be able to happen at would be Goodwin, and it would also be Norton. I know at the moment, a lot of sports clubs, including rugby, it actually breaches their club's rules and regulations to not have physiotherapy staff there. So I think working with Sheffield Hallam would be crucial, and seeing if we can actually make that happen, get their students who are qualified. It would obviously lower costs. And yeah, sorry.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question there?
Of course.
So let's assume short term there's no sport funding increase. Where does the money, the budget's constant, where does the money for the physiotherapy programme, even at your reduced cost of placement students being involved, where does the money come from? Where would you take it away from in the budget?
It would be reallocation, wouldn't it? You'd reallocate.
But from where?
Well, that's not something that I'd be able to tell you straight away. That would be something that would not just be my decision. I would have to consult with, like you say, with Andy Cox and Greg, and we'd figure that out. But when it's the students' harm or the students' health, matters of travelling, matters or expanding, I think actually looking after our students in sport and making it a more inclusive environment must be our first priority. It's always about the individual, and then it's looking about the wider issues.
Thank you. What policy are you both most excited for in your manifesto?
I'm excited to lobby over Goodwin and club sport funding, because sports committee and the sports officer held an Ascot University event a couple of weeks ago that we both attended, and it was a very senior turnout from staff. But But again, they were all yes people. They were all people who said, we agree, sport's fantastic. We see why you need this. We had managers in estate, managers in communications there. The two people who were missing were the Vice Chancellor and the Head of Education, who we've since been instructed that's where we need to go. That's the route we need to go down. They're the people we need to go on board, and I'm really excited to getting them on board.
Thank you. What about you?
I'm not sure if it's a policy almost, but I think motivating and invigorating students involved in sport, and even ones that aren't, to actually stand up. And this isn't an issue of Sport Sheffield. This isn't an institutional issue. This is also an issue of trying to get everyone passionate about sport here at Sheffield. And until we can get everyone on board, I don't think real change can actually happen. So I guess I'm most excited, or the policy, about working with representative groups and actually making it a more inclusive environment at Sheffield.
Thank you. What skills and experience do you both think you have that would make you ideal for being sports officer?
So the role that most springs to mind is from SU Council last year. So I was actually the first ever sports representative on SU Council. It was a fantastic referendum for sports engagement in student politics, and I believe it's kicked on into this year as well. I've been on sports committee this year. I've been swimming and water polo club president. But most importantly, I think, and I've listed this kind of in CVs left, right, and centre, is I had a big mental health battle a couple of years ago. I was in 2 years ago now. I was absolutely down and out. There's no way I'd be able to put myself in such a public forum like this, and it's made me who I am. That's what qualifies me.
That's amazing to hear that, Matt. Didn't know, but I'd say what makes me. Sorry, could you just repeat the question? What's the most quality? Was it best?
What skills and experience do you think that you have which make you most ideal for being sports officer?
Right. I don't have the CV that Matt has. I've not been on Sportscom. I've not been club captain. But I joined volleyball last year, fell in love with the sport. Within 3 months, progressed from development team to the men's team. Within a year, became men's manager. We're top of our league. We got through to the final 16, the only twos team to do that in the last 6 years. So I guess those are my sporting accolades while being at university. But before coming to university, I was in and out of care. I kind of had a bit of a maybe unconventional upbringing, and battled with depression myself. And I think probably for me and Matt, sport has become a family for both of us. We're coming at it from different angles maybe, but we're both passionate about making sport better. And I think it's incredible to have two candidates that want that.
Well, thank you both so much. It was lovely to hear from both of you.
Thank you.
These have been your potential sports officers. And I'm going to throw it back to the studio and punditry with Jack.
Thank you very much, Summer. Well, a really interesting debate, I thought. Lots to unpack. We'll get into the kind of meaty policy detail in a few moments, but what I thought I'd do first is just ask both of you how you thought the flow went for each candidate. It was obviously a two-candidate debate, sort of, as we were saying earlier, lots of time to unpick the policies to be explained. So, David, how do you think each candidate did in terms of their flow tonight?
I think in 3 years of covering these elections, I think that's probably the best debate I've ever seen. I think the fact that it was just two people gave them a lot more time to get their ideas across and sort of into the meat of the idea as well. So there's no hiding behind the fact if you don't know how you're going to cost-affect a policy or not. So I think it's one of the strongest debates I've ever seen. As for who edged it, I think whilst both candidates were very strong, I think Jordan was the better of the two. The fact that he pushed Matt onto the back foot, questioned him, picked holes in his policies, I think he had a great performance, but that's not to take it away from Matt. He did very well as well.
Flying in with a verdict early there. Tansy, do you agree?
I think it flows really well. You know, in terms of the two candidates, it's kind of like back and forth. They both get something to share, and especially I think in that kind of discussion, when someone flow an idea out, and then the other candidates is trying to push that forward, and then give a better idea of how we're gonna, really carry this out. So we're gonna talk about it in a bit.
Sure, yeah. I mean, it's a rare thing in this format, but I actually feel like I learned something new in that last half hour. So yeah, really good stuff. So I think for both candidates, what came up quite a lot was how the policies are going to be funded. There's a lot of kind of big ideas, reinvesting in Goodwin, lobbying the Vice Chancellor for things like that, but they're all going to cost a lot of money. So Tansy, do you think the candidates did a good job this evening of explaining the funding process for these policies?
I think Matt especially did really well in terms of giving all the stats about
Sure.
how the good win, and especially he mentioned social sports parts and how the season ticket is going to cost. And especially in one of the things that they mentioned about the qualified coaches, which Jordan threw out and saying that we're probably thinking about coaching every clubs with qualified coaches. And with that, Matt threw the question out saying, how do you think the fundings and the financial side going to support you with this idea? And then Jordan explained very clearly that we're going to have hire external coaches into that. And then Matt kind of added up on that discussion by saying that what if we can, train our students to do that kind of job so that we can cut the fundings we can cut the fundings by training our students.
Sure.
Yeah, instead
Sure.
of like employing.
Yeah, David,
externally, yeah.
what do you think to that? I mean, it's an interesting idea that students can also be fully qualified coaches. We don't necessarily need to employ someone externally to come in and coach sports team. Do you think that's something that can work on kind of a large scale basis?
I think it has pros and cons, as with every idea. I think the pros are that it will save the university a lot of money in the fact that that money that would have been used to pay a full-time professional can be used elsewhere. But then the downside of that is, A, it's putting more pressure on a student to learn another skill that they don't already have and to teach other people effectively. But then on the other hand, it will teach them a life skill going forward. So there are positives and negatives of it. And it's certainly not an idea I've thought of before. So it's a noble one, and I commend him for thinking of it.
Yeah, certainly lots of interesting stuff. And I think we could talk about this debate all day, but we have to cut back to summer and the activities debate. So with that, back over to the gallery.
Hello and welcome back. I'm here with your two potential activities officers. We have Simon and we have Joel. How is everyone feeling?
Yeah, pretty good.
Yeah, I'm grand. Thanks so much.
Lovely. Should we get started? So, how have activities officers in the past failed to support societies, and what would you do differently? Joel?
Hi, brilliant. So I think a lot of the activities officers in the past have sort of failed to have the hands-on approach to society. So going out to them and talking to them on a personal basis. And I come from a very small society. The Board Game Society, we're not very well known about. And I know a lot of times we'd appreciate someone there to support us through some of the issues that we're facing, such as room bookings, for example, which is an issue that's faced by a lot of societies. So I really want to give that personal touch if I was activities officer.
Thank you. Simon?
I think that the activities officers have always done quite a lot to help the societies, but of course going in, everyone's got a specific viewpoint about what needs to change, me and Joel included. But I think so long as we keep coming from different areas and keep working on the problems that we know from those areas, we'll always be making the Students' Union a better place.
Thank you. So, what skills and experience do you both think that you have that will make you an ideal candidate for an activities officer? Simon?
For the past 2 years, I've been part of committees. In my second year, I was a technical officer in SUTCO, and this year I'm the technical manager of SUTCO. And I've found that I'm actually quite organised, and I'm quite good at spotting the larger issues that are showing up as far smaller ones, which I think will really help me in dealing with more hidden problems for societies.
Thank you. You?
Brilliant stuff. So yeah, I've been part of two big societies, so Chemical Engineering Society and the War Game Society. I've held pretty much every committee position there is in the books. I've been on Societies Committee now for the past 2 years. I was a Special Interest Society Liaison last year, and I'm now the Societies Committee Events Coordinator. As well as that, I campaigned in the referendum to create the position of Societies Councillor and Sports Councillor last year. I was lucky enough to also win the election for that last year and also this year. So I've gone through the SU democracy side of societies as well. And they have really shaped the way I have, my viewpoint of societies and how I want to go about tackling all the issues they're facing.
Thank you. In both of your manifestos, you've talked about the booking system. Martha Effens, who was the activities officer in 19 to 20, had also had overhauling room booking systems in her manifesto, but we are no closer to a resolution. Do you have an action plan surrounding how this would be solved?
Unfortunately not, because I need to talk to more secretaries than I currently have to find out exactly what all of their problems with the room booking systems are before trying to tackle them. As it is, I've only got a few secretaries that I've talked to, but mainly it's just the convoluted fact that quite often the union will book out the whole of the union while never actually using it, which I'd like to just crack down on that and make sure that rooms are only booked by the union when we're planning on using them.
Hi, brilliant. So what's actually happening in May? The new sum system is coming along, which is the overhauled room booking system. And we've had meetings with the Societies Committee from some of the guys that are trying to implement that, who are going to try and help societies have a more hands-on approach to the way that's implemented to make sure it's accessible, sort of the way that Google Calendar works. So it's more like you block out a block system rather than having a really weird interface like the current system Artifacts has that's pretty much unusable apart from for staff, I think. I think just increasing that accessibility for room bookings is the first step, and making sure that societies are aware of how the system works and its implementation is really, really important to keep them involved.
Thank you both. Every year, activities officer candidates mention the lack of space within the SU. What do you think is the issue? Joel?
So lack of space in the SU. So that comes down to a number of issues. The fact that the SU isn't that big itself. So, and that obviously results in not enough space for people to have the rehearsals, not enough storage space for societies. And that's not really something we can fix inherently within our SU. So there are other options becoming apparent. So the likes of TV Studio, the space that it's currently in, which is actually due to be demolished, which is going to put a lot of societies in turmoil because that's where a lot of their stuff happens. And that's really, really unfortunate. And we got to think of a short-term solution for that. So it's about sort of retrofitting other spaces in the university as a short-term goal, and as well looking at plans and lobbying the university to include space in their new buildings for societies. Really, that's the most important thing.
Thank you. Simon, what's your take on this?
So, as I mentioned earlier, there's quite inefficient room booking as it stands, with a lot of rooms being unused, and I'd like cracking down on that would help. But ultimately, I really want to make university room booking a lot simpler, because there's a lot of space in the university that's just empty most of the time. I mean, just thinking about the lecture halls in Hicks, they're quite large and almost always empty after about 5, because obviously there's nothing going on. And I think if we really utilise that space, we could almost make up for the loss of TV Studio.
Thank you. What is an idea of an event in the SU that you'd really want to throw?
I have no specific ideas. I just really, really want to help any society put on anything they want to put on, because it's so important that the university supports the students in any and all ways they can.
Brilliant. So I'm throughout my time in societies, even I've really come from an event production background. So, for example, in the Chemical Engineering Society, we did an event called Frank Morton last year, which was a 1.8k person sports day / night out, which is amazing to run. And I really do believe about the skills to implement other events and give people the skills to implement events themselves. So an idea for an event I had that's in my manifesto is Societies Week. And that'll be a way of giving all societies equal representation, whereas, say, if we had in the activities fair, where every society is pushed into a weak corner somewhere that they can't necessarily be found, this would give all societies the opportunity to showcase their diversity and how amazing they are.
Thank you. On Joel's comment, how would you also equally represent all societies?
I want to make sure that we're giving a lot more advertising around the union for far smaller societies, because the larger societies have the members that they'll get to know people in their course, and it brings in more people. The larger societies will always make themselves bigger, while the smaller societies will shrink. And I really, really want to advertise, mostly using the digital screens, the smaller societies, so that they can have more members and hopefully grow to be some of the far larger societies in the union.
Thank you. A question for you, Joel. You have proposed a new events fund. Can you tell us more about what this is and where you'd get the money for this, please?
So the new events fund is actually already it's come in place last Thursday, I do believe. So that's something the Societies Committee proposed. I didn't actually mention in my manifesto of proposing the fund. I mentioned promoting. So that would be really, really important. So that's a new channel for societies to get money, because societies already have a massive budget across the SU. Something like 40 grand is allocated to societies, which is huge. I mean, we don't need more funding. We just need different channels to provide societies with it. And that would just be great. So that fund in itself would help societies run cool new events and just do amazing things and showcase what they've got.
Thank you. Question for you, Simon. In your manifesto, you have said that you want to organise a system for old equipment to be offered to another society. Can you tell me more about this policy and why you've suggested it?
So, as I've already mentioned, I'm part of SUPCO, and quite often we put on shows. Well, obviously it's what we do. But often after we finish that show, we have equipment that we don't necessarily still need, from props to set, that could be far more utilised by other societies, but we don't have the time to message around to find out which societies actually want that equipment. So it ends up in our storage getting battered around because we don't have enough storage like every society. But also there's other societies that could give away equipment that would be useful in our shows as well. And I feel like that's probably shared across all the societies. And I'd also like the equipment to be offered to students if no societies want it.
I could just comment on that, if that's right. So there's already a system in place for that. It's called the Shed, which was implemented by Societies Committee at the end of last year. And that's a way that societies can actually, there's a big database of all society equipment that they can add to it if they want to share their equipment, which is a really amazing thing. It makes the equipment more sustainable. And just a bit of a subtle plug, if you've got any spare equipment lying about that your society is not using, look at the Societies Committee Facebook page and put it on the Shed.
I do have a quick comment on Shed, because it was one of my things this year coming into my committee role was to make use of Shed and get our equipment more easily loaned out, because obviously we don't need it all the time. But unfortunately, due to years of equipment buying for shows, we just had too much to catalogue. And this just means that it's just the stuff that we're getting rid of to reduce waste, as opposed to just the stuff we're keeping hold of.
Thank you. Joel, in your manifesto, you said that society support is currently all over the place. What do you mean by that, and how would you propose a solution?
It really is. So I don't think there's one unified place where societies can go for support. Obviously, we have student group support down in the office downstairs in the activity zone, but there's also resource documents that are all on the SU website, which is really hard to navigate. And I really want to streamline the accessibility of those support resources with the new and upcoming SU app, which is proposed to be implemented within the year. And I think that would be a great place to put the room booking system to make it accessible, as well as support videos, training videos, so they're there all year round, and that would also reduce staffing resources. And I think that would be something that would be super amazing to see and super useful for societies to have.
Thank you. Simon, you have said that you wanted to work with the education officer to keep Wednesdays as free as possible. Why do you think it needs continuing?
So a couple of my friends are master's students, and they've told me that they don't really get Wednesdays off, which means that they're limited in their societal engagement, which I think is quite a shame for them, because it is, for most of them, their last year, and they probably want to get as involved as possible. But I also acknowledge that we have to have lectures on Wednesdays because there's not enough time in the calendar, otherwise we need the time. But I'd like to shift the weight a little bit off of the master's students so that we still all have Wednesdays free-ish, but not that we're putting all the master's students on Wednesdays.
Okay, thank you so much. So what policy are you both most excited for to introduce?
So I'm really excited for the storage policy that I proposed. So as I've mentioned probably before, I think, in my first year of council, this year of council even, I've created the Sustainable Society Storage Policy, which kind of mandates the officer focus for the next 3 years to focus on the storage crisis that societies are currently facing. And that is one that I've personally felt through my small society, War Games Society. We've felt it, and I know our members have felt it for the past 20 years, that nothing's changed. So I think I'm really excited to tackle that head on, and I believe I've got the skill set to do it.
Thank you. And what about you?
I'm quite interested in giving more support to our inclusions officers, because over the years they've just gotten more and more work, and I know that that's just not really fair on them, because they join the societies to have fun as much as everyone else did, and they're just not being able to because they're having to almost act as guidance for the members of the society.
When you say you want to give them more support, what support exactly would you give? What would it entail?
I think they need better training programs, because I know that sometimes the training can be a bit off base or not particularly relevant, but also sometimes it's really, really poorly advertised, which just makes it so difficult for them to have the support that they need to enjoy their society and support their society at the same time.
Can you tell me more about your dedicated Societies Week, please?
Yes, so basically, the idea of Societies Week is that I want to have a day dedicated to each society category. Obviously, there's a few sort of smaller categories like media and tech and faith that could be grouped into other ones, but I really want to dedicate as much as I can a day for each society category. And really, what that would involve is societies organising the events themselves, which would be advertised during Freshers Week to really sort of engage people to try out something new, maybe take up a new hobby, something that would be something that would interest them, or that they might not otherwise have seen. And really, I want to finish that week with a massive celebration. We already have Dance Your Socks Off, and I'd love to implement that into that week to really sort of finish it off.
Simon, what's your opinion on this? Do you also have a way to advertise or celebrate societies?
Well, I do want to advertise the smaller societies because, as I said, I think the bigger societies find it relatively easy to find new members. But also, I think Societies Week is an absolutely brilliant idea.
Thank you.
Thank you. The activities officer this year for 2019 to 20 has made the least progress out of all the officers so far. What would you do, and how confident are you that that wouldn't be your track record if you are elected?
Well, yeah, so as I mentioned, to publicise the new events fund, tick. I'm already working on it. I'm already part way through the progress of working through the storage crisis. As I said, I've done the sustainable storage policy. I am confident that I can work for all my manifesto promises because they are promises. I really want to commit to them, and I believe they're all achievable.
Because I really, really want to see the societies get better because the union has been one of the best parts about my time at Sheffield. But more importantly than that, we can do more for the students. We can support them more. And I think that because I feel so strongly for that, I'll work really, really hard to make it happen.
Thank you. A question for you, Joel.
Yes.
You've said that you wanted to improve committee member training, and it was all annual, right? All over the year, if I'm right about that. Correct me if I'm wrong. What are the issues of committee member training, and what are your proposed solutions?
So committee member training is currently done by a member of staff who sits down a number of committee members into a room, gives a training session, then they leave. I really want to make sure that training is accessible all year round. I know the documents for that are accessible, but I really want sort of an online and constantly accessible training program so that societies have access to that training throughout the year to refresh their memory, to ensure that they're being more inclusive, to make sure that they're doing their funding right, because that's something an issue we always see here at Societies Committee, that we're getting funding queries, and I really want to make sure that committees know what they're doing, really.
Thank you so much both for this debate and for joining us. I'm going to throw it back to the studio for punditry.
Thanks very much, Simon. Again, I think lots to unpack there. I'm joined by two of my favourite pundits to analyse what's been going on. Again, before we get into the kind of the policy detail, how do you think the night flowed for both candidates tonight? David, let's start with you.
I think it was another good, strong debate. I think the fact that there's fewer candidates again means there's more time for them to talk in detail about their policies. I think Joel was very detailed and knowledgeable on his policies, specifically on the cost effectiveness as well. However, my concern for both candidates is I don't think there's particularly any unique ideas that really stand out to me massively. So I think it's essentially trying to deliver on policies that haven't been delivered before.
Emily, how about you? Was there anything that stood out to you policy-wise?
Policy-wise, I'm not really sure. I thought the storage policy, it was interesting. But again, I'm not sure how they're going to implement things. There wasn't that much background detail. I would think that was kind of lacking.
Sure. Okay, quite soundbite to what we're saying then. Let's get into kind of the policies one by one and see if we can try and shed some light on what's going on here. So we start off with a conversation about the booking system. It's something in both candidates' manifestos that this booking system needs reform. Emily, do you agree?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I really struggle to use the SU website, the booking. I find it really difficult to work. I always find myself clicking like 100 times on the website, so I think definitely changing that. But again, I'm not really sure how. I was kind of confused on how they were actually going to implement the change.
Yeah, this is sort of quite a lot of, we'll make it better, but...
Yeah.
But, okay, and David, what about you? What do you think of the booking system
Yeah, I
reform
agree.
programme?
I don't use the booking system because of how difficult it is to use. I let other people do it for me. So I think the fact that Martha tried to improve on it in the past and struggled, it's meant to be coming in later this year. We shall see. It's a good idea. It's well targeted. It does need improving, but it's actually trying to be the person that delivers that promise that's been said for so many years.
Okay, let's move on then to something that kind of featured a bit later on in the debate. This idea of a Societies Week that Joel Kirk has to celebrate societies, finishing with a big dance your socks off at the end of the week. What are your thoughts on that, Emily? Sorry.
It's interesting. I think because we've already got kind of societies weeks with
Sure.
with freshers and refreshers. They're already very widely celebrated. So I think it was interesting. I think it was Simon talking about putting them up on digital boards, especially for the smaller societies. I kind of agreed with, but again, they're kind of repeating what's already happening at the SU.
Yeah, yeah, I think so. If we do have the Societies Week, what do you think its function should be, David, or is it just kind of something that's dead in the water before it begins?
I think it's essentially just Freshers' Fair, but for 5 days, because you have that period at the start of each term, each semester, outline the societies that are there. You all have a dedicated time, because then you have to remember those societies have to give up their time to advertise for the week, whether each society is available every day or they have a specific day. That's more time for societies to give up and advertise themselves. I think it'd be better to go digital, where a lot of people find out about things these days, and have a Facebook campaign rather than doing a physical SU event, in my opinion, at least.
You'd agree as well.
Yeah.
Okay. How about we move on again then? I think we're kind of rolling through things nicely here. And then we've got this question over saving space within the SU. I think both candidates touched on it. How space saving, it seems to be a problem. I mean, I don't know about you, but yeah, this is like one of the biggest SU buildings I've ever been in the country.
Yeah.
But that said, I never really have to store anything. So yeah, maybe David, what do you think to this? It's a strange one.
Societies are huge at Sheffield, and it's reflected in the electorate as well, because it's the most commonly voted on thing in the elections. The turnout last year was the highest at 15.32%. So the fact that people want a storage area for their equipment is valid. It's just a matter of whether you're going to go out and store that equipment. And as for the SU itself, it's been the number one in the country for many, many years straight. So that doesn't mean we should be complacent and say everything is fine. So finding a seat is something that people find difficulty with. The reality is this building going to get an extension? Not so sure.
I feel like it's had several extensions in recent history. So yeah, it's probably something unlikely. Emily, how about you? What do you
I
think?
think I'd completely agree. Actually, we're already five floors. I'm not sure that they're really going to work on building more space.
Okay, and very quickly from each of you, if you had to pick a winner for this evening's debate, who would you pick and why? David?
I would go Joel. I think he came across just a little bit stronger of the two. He had some concrete ideas, challenged Simon on his ideas, and had some great sound bites and media campaigning behind him.
Emily?
Yeah, I think I'd have to agree. I think he was the stronger campaigner out of the two.
Okie dokie. That's settled then. Back to Summer now with the women's debate. Only one candidate, but it's right that Lily Grimshaw gets the chance to be grilled on her policy proposals as well. So we'll leave that with you.
Hello and welcome back. I'm joined with your Women's Officer candidate, Lily. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Great. Let's get this conversation started. So, why are you passionate about being a women's officer?
So for the past 2 years, I've become more active around campus and university. I was in FemSoc, and last year I joined FemSoc committee. And I've really taken the opportunity to engage more with women's issues and things. And I'd like to take this experience and passion to the next level. And I feel like the women's officer position could do that for me. I'd have a lot to give back to the university as well.
Thank you. So some disabled students have said that they don't feel supported by the university because they didn't properly know DDSS when they joined, but also that their support by their welfare officers was lacking. If they were to contact you with this issue, how would you tackle it?
So I go directly to the welfare committee and the people who are responsible for those, and I'd work collectively with them to get to the root of the problem, and then have regular meetings with the individuals in particular, but also with the committees just to have checkups and make sure that the problem is being solved, because every student needs their needs and their interests being listened to and acted upon.
Thank you. So a lot of disabled students struggle with university due to the influx of hospital appointments, but then also their bad days as well. They then have to struggle to catch up with their work. How would you support them during this?
I think, I would contact them directly and go with their tutors as well to see if they could manage their workload in different ways. And then again, having regular meetings to check up on them and see if there's a way of working around it. Because I feel like any student who's dealing with a physical or a mental disability or any mental health problems needs to be listened to. And I don't think those disadvantages should ever affect their well-being and also their educational performance as well.
How are you going to support students that suffer with mental health at university?
We're working collectively with the welfare officer I would like to cover like the range of issues that need doing, but also I feel like there's certain aspects of university that aren't being spoken to enough. So like one of my key policies is like trying to focus on tackling the stigma surrounding like eating disorders, because I know this is like quite a common issue that's not really spoken about enough at the university level. Like it's a problem that a lot of students suffer with. And I feel like more needs to be done about it.
With your body dysmorphia campaign, like what would it involve specifically?
So it's the body neutrality campaign, which basically focuses on promoting people's well-being and helping individuals like accept the body that they're in, rather than celebrating like what they look like and things. And I feel like it's a really important thing to sort of deal with. And I'd like hold like workshops and talks and things where people would be able to feel comfortable to come and speak about their issues, and offering support, and holding quite like important discussions about the importance of nutrition and things, and helping the students to like have better relationships with their bodies, because I feel like it's something that's not spoken about enough, and it's something that can really affect your mental well-being as well.
Thank you. Some BME students feel underrepresented in university. How would you make sure that they are represented throughout the uni?
Well, this is something that, like, one of my key policies is like talking about intersectionality. So I'd want to work with all of the representative committees, including the BME committees, and open up the conversation with them to see what issues that they feel need tackling, and then having feedback sessions and things to actively do that. I know that the attainment gap is a massive issue. Also know that there's not enough diversity in the curriculum. I know the current officer, Rose, has been doing like a lot of work with this. I'd like to continue with that. But also I feel like, because obviously I'm not an individual who experiences the sorts of issues that BME students, disabled, LGBTQ students experience, I feel like I would need to keep the conversation going, and communication would be key with that.
Thank you. In your manifesto, you have said that you wanted to create a student-led biannual exhibition and journal. What does this entail? Why do you think this is important? Where would it be hosted? And do you have an idea about how much it would cost?
So it's based on the idea that we have such a diverse array of female talent at our university, and it's not being celebrated enough. So each of the different departments and each of the different liberation groups would submit pieces of work. It would be held biannually, so once a semester basically. And any student or member of staff could submit a piece of work that they feel particularly proud of, and it would be showcased across the university. So in an exhibition form, maybe in the Octagon, journal published online. With the costing, I wouldn't be able to tell you that, but it's something that I could obviously work out as soon as if I was elected.
Thank you so much. So BME disabled LGBT plus and LGBTQ plus and self-identifying women have different needs in accordance with different issues. How will you make sure that you represent and support all of these issues and needs equally?
Well, I think I've touched on this already. It's the idea that I would keep the conversation going between the different representative committees, and listening directly to them and acting upon them, because as I said, as a white, straight, cis woman, I have no idea about their experiences and things. So I feel like I would need to be speaking to them directly to be able to do this.
Thank you. What are the issues with the current approach to sexual consent, and what solution would you implement to change and challenge this?
So the situation with the education about consent at the moment, we have a great program in place with the consent champions, but I do feel like, because it's still coming up as an issue year after year, that not enough is being done about it. So I'd like to change this by having compulsory lectures at the start of every year, and because the consent champions aren't, like, the sessions aren't compulsory. And also I'd like to improve the training given to sports committees and key committee members using the Good Lad Initiative, which is basically an organisation that was founded in 2013, and it basically tries to tackle toxic masculinity. And I feel like a big problem at our university is there's still like a lot of locker room banter, and I know cases of sexist chants and things in sports teams and things, so I'd like to actively tackle this.
Thank you. How will you ensure a safe and inclusive campus?
So I'd carry on Rose's brilliant policy at the moment, zero tolerance to sexual harassment, continuing the Ask Angela campaign, and also I feel like I'd like to continue as in working with the representative committees and things to make sure that all women on campus feel safe and included.
Thank you. What leadership skills do you have that makes you feel that you are ideal for this role?
Leadership skills. Well, I'm campaigns officer currently on FemSoc, so I've been part of running like quite a few campaigns throughout the year. I'm also Women's Council of the SU Council, so I feel like I'm well equipped to represent the views of others, to listen to people and take those views forward.
There have been campaigns in the past about a BMA officer. What are your opinions about this?
I think we should definitely be lobbying for a BME officer because the role of the women's officer covers such a wide array of different groups, and I feel like if we had a BME officer, the needs and interests of the BME students would be well listened to and well reflected upon.
Why should people vote for you?
Because I'm incredibly passionate about representing the views of all women on campus. I feel like I'm quite well experienced in campaigning for women's rights and equality. And also, I really love this university and I've had such an excellent time here. And I feel like I have a lot to give and I want to make the student experience better for future students.
How would you encourage attendance to consent workshops and how would you rework them?
So the consent workshop, so I'd say bringing the work of the Good Loud Initiative, which is an external organisation who are qualified and I think have a really high success rate in reshaping conversation about consent, because I feel like it's a culture and societal change that can only begin with big conversations that need to happen, quite difficult conversations need to happen, and compulsory training sessions for sports teams and things.
Women, and indeed men, may unfortunately experience violence, drink spiking and assault along with other things during university. Do you have any policies which you'd create to give them a safe space for them to speak to you? And how would you handle that situation and provide a solution?
I think it's a brilliant point and it's still such a prevalent issue at our university. I think that I would promote a safe space and the fact that individuals would be able to come to members of security, as they can do already, on nights out they can go and report instances of sexual violence and things. And I feel like the university, like working with the welfare officer potentially to open up a safe space for people to come and report them, continuing also Rose's work with the anonymous form that she's brought out this year, which is brilliant. Because I feel like with the anonymity, people are able to come forward and we can tackle the problems from there.
Thank you so much. This has been your candidate for Women's Officer, and I'm now going to throw it back to the studio.
And that was our only female candidate for the Women's Officer, Lily Grimshaw. Guys, what did you think? Did you think she had many original ideas? Obviously, being the only candidate, did you think she was a very strong contender?
Yeah, I thought she was really good. Obviously, stiff competition out there.
Yeah,
But,
yeah, I know, right?
No, I thought she was really good. I think she had some really innovative ideas. I really liked the idea of the biannual journal.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, what do you think?
I was thinking with the body neutrality campaign, I thought that was like really good and just continuing the work that Baron's done with like the welfare, with just the talks about eating disorders and sort of being, although it's like women's, it's more inclusive of everybody. So just to tackle eating disorders and like talk about it more, I think is a good thing that we need to be doing.
Has this been new, do you think, with the body neutrality, or do you think this is a complete like rerun of ideas we spoke about before? I think, Georgie, you mentioned before that we've done things similar to this.
So I think we have done things similar before, and that's not a bad thing. I think just to expand on it and, you know, bring more awareness of it is a good thing
I don't
to be
think
doing.
it's anything that we can have enough of.
No.
It's something that needs to keep going. So, yeah.
And what about when it comes to her recognition of white feminism, how she is like a white cis?
I thought that was really cool that she acknowledged that, because I think for some people who are BME students might look at her and think, oh, well, how are you going to stand up for me? So I think it was quite cool that she acknowledged that.
Yeah, Georgia, what do you think?
I think that exactly the same. I think going and acknowledging that and speaking directly to each society to find out what their needs is, because it's all well and good and, you know, designing all these policies and going to say you do this and do this, but it might not be exactly what that society wants to do. So acknowledging that and talking to them and seeing what their needs are, I think is a good step to implementing policies after that.
She kept reiterating how she was going to directly talk to welfare committees.
Definitely.
Which I think was quite important.
Absolutely. Do you think she's missing anything on the mark, or do you think she's hit every level that there needs to be for a women's officer?
I think just the stats and the funding need to be put behind everything that's said, because obviously everything does cost money. And say with the biannual exhibition,
Yeah, it's a great idea, but it sounds like it's going to be a big thing that's going to take a lot of funding, doesn't it?
Yeah, that sounds like, one, it'll take a lot of funding, and two, it needs direct, concrete committees behind it. So obviously the Octagon's a big place. It'd take a lot to put on a big event, and you'd want to, I'm pretty sure like there'll be many societies who are willing to take part, but it's just finding everyone seeing what wants to be put on an exhibit.
Definitely.
Is a task to be done.
So who do you think's going to get the vote? Do you think it'll be Ron?
Well,
Is it Ron or Lily?
I mean, good luck to Lily.
Yeah, best of luck.
I hope she does well.
Yeah, absolutely. And now we're going to throw it back to Sam and now with the gallery room for our International Student Officers debate.
Hello and welcome back to the SU Gallery Room. I'm here with your international officer candidates. We have Saya, Helen, Jack, Yuri, Hania, and Lulu. O genki desu ka? Ni hao ma, tudo bem, and kaifa haluki?
Wow, impressive.
Well, that's great.
That's really
done.
good.
How's everyone doing?
Great.
Doing good? Okay.
Pronunciation.
Yeah.
So how do you propose ensuring the support for international students are carried out?
Sorry?
How do you propose that ensuring support for international students are carried out?
Yeah, so one of my bigger policies is culture shock support. So when I came to university, I come from Japan. I didn't know what a students' union was. I didn't know what varsity was. I didn't know what the NHS was. And I had lived in London for 8 years before coming to Sheffield. And I still didn't know all these things because I was so young back then. I had come to London, then went back to Japan, and then come back again. So living alone is really, really hard, especially coming from thousands of miles away. So I think that having a menu tab dedicated to international students in the SU website that has all the information that you need. Where is registration? Where is the SU? Where is Goodwin? All these things need to be accessible from day zero, really. Because now we have the internet. You can have it at your hands before you even get accepted.
What about you?
Yeah, I agree with Saya because when we are international and we're from a very far away, like we come from China. So when I come to Sheffield, I'm very not very get used to the life in Sheffield, and I will feel homesick. And well, I think like the most important for international students is like the social platform, like Saya said. We have the SU website and we have the Sheffield website, but we often use like Facebook and Instagram. For like Chinese or another people use WeChat. So I think like we put like more informations in the social media, like more international students to get used life in Sheffield and enjoy their life in Sheffield. Yeah.
What about you?
Yeah, for me, and I really think like all the information should translate to different languages. When I was living in remote village, and there are different kind of languages, so you can pick up the guide and then everyone can understand what is going on. So it can feel warm. I can see own language. I can fully understand it. It's very important at the beginning of the schools. And what's more, I also would like to hold to like activities which get students get involved in to experience different culture, try to speak English. Yeah, and that would be fantastic. Thank you.
What about you?
Hello, hi everybody. Actually, my main idea is kind of a mix of Saya's idea and Jack's idea. I've worked in the residences as a residence mentor, and I've got to deal with many issues from people from all backgrounds. And I figured out that the main problem is that many times international students don't know where to find support that is already available from the university. So what I believe is that we could have a single point of access for support, which I call is like a website, a Facebook. No, sorry, a page in the Sheffield University website. But this page should be translated to all the different languages of the students from the university. It's not hard to be done. And I do believe also, though, that, Saya mentioned the culture shock thing, which actually, I do believe it's the most, it's the biggest issue that we face as international students. I think, obviously, we have finances, homesickness, language issues, but culture shock is how do we adapt to this culture, how we understand how British people feel, how to interact with so many different things. And I believe that our buddy program is my main idea, where we get paired up international students with home students with home students, international with international, so everybody can support with cultural advice, skill share, and language advice and networking opportunities.
Thank you. Hania?
Basically, as all of them said, I agree with everyone. And one main support system I'm like trying to or willing to implement is basically like incorporating international representatives. So basically, when freshers first come, they would be assigned to each like international fresher would be assigned to international representative from his or her own country. So because when personally I first came here, I was so shocked of everything. Like I knew how to speak English very well because like back home I studied English. I knew how to do everything. I didn't know banking, housing, how to like go around, what to do, what's a tram. We didn't have that. So what helped me was my international friends. Like I got to know Arabs because I'm from Egypt, and I like got to know everyone. So they helped me. So this like helped me get the idea of, okay, we can do international representatives, not one for each fresher, but like 2 or 3 for each, like 2 or 3 freshers for each international representative. So it would be someone from their home country, would help them like with everything, would get like any difficulties, they would still like feel home because they speak their same language. They wouldn't feel like they went all the way out, and it'd get them like accustomed to the British culture, basically.
Yeah, I just totally agree with all candidates' ideas, which are all very good ideas. But I have some like detailed ideas. I'd like to promote like international parties for all students in the student union. You know, I just talk with many students, and we just join some different activities outside school, and there are parties. They said, oh, there isn't a union. At that time, I really want to give their this kind of platform and for them to just join in the student union. This is a big family. We can have many parties here. You know, I saw there are student union, very big building. We can separate, we can divide in different parts of this building. And for this part, like bar 1 and second part, like activity room, we can just hold like a pub crawl. Why not? So this is my idea. You know, we just join some different kind of activities, and students can know each other. Like student union provides students very good platform, and they can talk with each other. They can share their ideas and their minds, and this way is very good way to do mutual understanding and respect.
Thank you so much, everyone. So, a question is, some international students may find the curriculum, examination and assignments difficult as it's not what they're used to. What policies do you have to support them? We'll start from Saya and go all the way to Lulu.
So that's also a part of my culture shock program, was explaining the grading system, because I come from a grading system of A, B, 98, 100, but now here it's 2 1s, thirds. What is that? Basically, so that needs to all be explained before you even come into university, because you get another proposal that I have is a pen pal project. So you'd be paired with either a home student or an international student that is a current student. So it'd be kind of like Sheffield Mentors, but more targeted towards international students, where you get information that is current, information that people actually need, because the university and the union really do try to provide information for us, but it's not real life information. And as an international student ambassador, I've been doing it for 2 years, and I've called people and they've always asked the same question: what is accommodation like? What is British food like? Like, these smaller, more detailed questions might seem menial to the university and the union, but they're things that people really want to know. And grading systems and like how to get feedback. What is the feedback like? That's something that current students can really help with, because we've all experienced it. And I would personally love to take part in my own pen pal project. So yeah.
Helen?
Yeah, I think like for international students, everything is new here. Like exam, just you said, like because we're doing like masters, we often like make like anxiety about and nervous about the deadline. And when come here, we didn't know like what is plagiarism and references form, and what like in detail about exams or something else. And for I think like when we're doing like because I as academic rep, I also like listen to my friends or my department's like advice about what we can do for them, and my policy about like management like library service and to improve it, because I think like during exam times we all like need like in diamonds or ICs is all good for us, and I think like to chat with the library staff, I think like we can do to promote the library service for international students and home students to like provide better exam service for them. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, as my opinion, I really agree with both your ideas. And I think there is indeed a very difference between different countries come here have a different exam system. For example, in China, I always got over 90 grades, but here it's very different. Over 80 grades is better, but some students don't know that they feel upset. So I am going to establish a exam support committee and there it can explain, it send email and it's targeted to international students and let them know what's the curriculum and what's the difference between it. And I also the exam support committee, I also aim to like figure out the reference, and there are different reference and different like international students may struggle with English, so the grammar check that would be most important. But a lot of them don't know how to get support. They usually finish it just before deadline. So I need a quick access. Just send the essay out and get a very quick feedback. That would help a lot. And I'll also, as a academic rep at information school, some of my my classmates complain about that they don't know how they failed. Yeah, just failed the exam. So it's very struggling. And you can send it to exam support committee, and they give the feedback. So it's help them and improve them. And what Yuri says, like buddy support program is also helpful. And so because there are different cultures, so if you can, like for example, and in China, and we don't like the program system is very different. So if our buddies say what's the difference, it would be very helpful. Thank you so much.
Wow, an exam support committee. That
Yeah.
sounds really lovely. That's really good. Yeah. I do believe that the university provides a lot of support. As I said, for example, for English language, we have the LTC, right, the English Language Teaching Center. We have the personal tutors. You have the office hours of the different lecturers. But many times, us as international students, we don't know about it. We don't know how to reach to it. For example, for me, office hours was something that I'd never seen in Brazil before, and I only started actually using it on third year. You know, or for example, sometimes it's not really a problem about how we use the language, about like knowing vocabulary, but it's about how we write. Because writing in academic Portuguese is very different than writing academic English. And I do think that we need to bring more access. We need to clarify how to access the support. So that goes to the idea of the single point of access. So like a web page, again, in the University of Sheffield website, where you have all the support very well detailed in different languages, so how to achieve them. So there we'll be talking about the LTC, we'll be talking about personal tutors, we'll be talking about the office hours, you know, the buddy program as well, because really knowing British people, being friends with having British friends makes such a difference when you actually like need somebody to proofread your essay, to tell you like to help you out on how if that is sounding British, you know, if that is sounding actually like as academic English, you know, because sometimes it takes a while for you to understand how you should sound like. So again, the buddy program really would help with that. Yeah, I think this main is still these two main ideas. I have more ideas, by the way, but these two main ideas I think would still really play out for the support.
Thank you, Hania. This will go back again to my like international representatives idea, because basically the international representatives, their main goal is like, or what I'm thinking about is that like they have to get in touch with basically freshers before they come, so they explain everything, the grading system, how to like references, plagiarism, everything, despite this being explained in tutorials and stuff like that. But again, it's important. Especially, I think the grading system is very, very important, because like I remember when I first came here and I got my first 75%, I called my mom and I was like, oh my God, I got a 75. She was like, Hania, you failed. And I was like, no, I didn't. I got a really good mark. And then like I had to explain everything and how like we grade here, and like this is really actually really good, because like back home if you got above a 90, you're an amazing like student, but like if you got below 90, you're like sort of a failure, they'd say. But yeah, so this I believe is extremely important, and therefore this goes back to my international representatives explaining everything, how to like to deal with everything. And again, as Yuri said, like proofreading and everything, making British friends, this all plays a role within my international representatives like program. So yeah, I believe.
Yeah, I really think like body program and language program is also very good program. Like I'm a representative, academic representative in my English department. I think language is really important, like a bridge for students to know each other. But I think for me, if I just I can work something I can serve for students, I'd like to do as a platform for students, like to help them to introduce some activities they need to know. Maybe they know that they will involve in this kind of activities, like just to help different societies to introduce their society for 1 month, 1 week, and they can like more students know about that. And I think there isn't any language barriers for them, and they can know about, they can involve them, and they can also choose which one they like that. And if they join more, and they will find funny inside this kind of activity, and like just the combine different program together, we do as a bridge for students and serving for students.
Thank you.
Can I add something?
Yes, of course.
I think for like that point, we should interact, like the international like officer should interact with the education officer, because like in my first year, I had many students being an academic rep and all. I had many students like they all complain about the idea of we don't understand how we're being graded. Why is there negative marking? Why is that happening? No one understood anything. So it's not only about internationals, but rather instead about everyone, basically all students. So therefore, I think we should interact with like education officers and everyone to incorporate the ideas.
Thank you. A big question is, how would you make Sheffield feel like home?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. I've been involved quite a lot in the SU. My first year, I was not that involved because I was quite homesick and sad, and I couldn't go home during the winter because the exam dates come out so late, and you can't book tickets because they're extortionately expensive. So I had to kind of stay in Sheffield, and I was very like sad, but I got involved in the SU from the second year. I joined the International Students Committee as East Asia representative. I joined Societies Committee as National and Cultural Liaison. I've also joined Liberty Bell magazine. I got involved with a bit with Forge, and I've carried on those activities. I'm now vice chair of International Students Committee, and I am working in representative committees, liaison for Societies Committee. I'm a lifestyle editor for Liberty Bell. All these things I've done through the SU really have really made Sheffield a really like wonderful second home, because I am from Japan, but I lived in London during my childhood, and then I moved to New York straight after graduating high school. And now Sheffield is like my fourth home, I guess, but it's somewhere that I've really found comfort in because people here are so wonderful. The northern like friendliness is really, it's real. I'm in the line like Boots, and the cashier talks to me for like 10 minutes just gossiping about the weather. So like, I just want to share this wonderful experience that I have had with new students, current students who just haven't had the chance to get involved as much as I have through like activities, events, campaigns. I have a lot of ideas I've generated through my years of getting involved in committees and societies that I really want to make into fruition in this position. Yeah.
Thank you. That's really interesting, Helen.
Yeah, when I first time to come in Sheffield, because I really know like in student union, so I really benefit from our student union and also remember when orientation week we have like slogan about we are international, but some of my friends in China they'll just say I miss my family and miss my country, and I think they're not very like as Sheffield as her home, because I think the first thing is they didn't get like such detailed informations, because sometimes we didn't use like Facebook frequently and Instagram. So for me, like because
Hi and welcome back. Sorry about the little blip that we had. We were just here with Jack getting his answer on how he would propose to make Sheffield feel like home.
Yeah.
You did say 3 day trips. Just a little detail I want to talk about is how much would that cost for the SU? Where would the hubs be and etc.?
Oh, I think that would cost not very small. We hold lots of activities, so a 3 day trip is people who get where they can get close, very strong relationship. So, like we can get some sponsorship. For example, I just go to like a fair like Nature Express. We're in to offer every one single student in Sheffield have a 1 free trip. Yeah, to whatever, just get the famous, especially for the first year student. So we can fund sponsorship. And by the way, I also know that like some society have fundings. Yeah, like funding for other events. If the day trip, they can just hold society and get know each other and have free day trip, get to a stronger relationship. That would be better. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yuri, what is your response to it? To how to make Sheffield feel like home?
Okay. First, we need to ask ourselves what home is. What is home? Home. I think home is a place where you feel that you belong. It's a place where you feel safe, where you feel that you have friends, where you feel that you can feel comfortable at. And I would say that for us to be sure that Sheffield can feel like home, we need to tackle 2 things. We need to think about 2 things, which is integration and support, right? So basically, all my policies, I finished my manifesto saying that everyone should feel like home, should feel at home in Sheffield. And all my policies are directed to this. If you want to take a look, please take a look at my website, voteforyuri.wixsite.com/international. But I would say for integration, we need to make sure that integration is not only about events, it's not only about getting in touch with people from your country. I mean, this is really very important. I have a lot of ideas for that. But integration is about creating an environment where everybody feel comfortable and everybody can connect and talk and connect despite the background, despite where you come from, right? So first, this is the focus. So that's why I talked about the buddy program, right? I think that this is one way. I also talk about strengthening the links between societies and international officer and international committee and the different minority committees. So we can all like make events together. We can all support each other with common and individual issues. This is a way of creating an environment where everybody feels comfortable, where everybody can connect despite the background. This includes home and international students. The other thing is support. As I talked about the web page where we have the single point of access for support is a very big policy of mine. I like to highlight that I work in the residences for 2 years. I've supported students from all backgrounds, dealing with all kinds of issues, and I mean it. I've seen all kinds of issues, and I've helped people dealing with all of this. And so, yeah, I believe support is a big thing because the residence is where you should feel at home, isn't it? Yeah.
Thank you, Hania.
I'd start by saying my slogan is basically one for all for one. This does not identify like international officer for all, like representing all, but instead what I mean is unity and that we're all on one hand. So this is what makes Sheffield basically home, when you feel like everyone is surrounding you, everyone's there for you, and that you're not alone. And I believe I personally like achieved having Sheffield my home is through basically incorporating in different societies, different events, different activities, meeting people from all around the world, everything. So basically when I first came to Sheffield, I made friends with Arabs because they're my culture. Well, and like now I refer to them to my family. Like there's so many of them where when I was running for the like international officer, I was like having my doubts, should I do that, should I not do that? And I remember like 7 people specifically were like, yes, go for it, we're all behind you. And like they're now my campaign team, everyone's helping me and everyone's doing everything for me, like they're helping me do that. So this is when I felt like, yeah, Sheffield is home. Sheffield is where I can go back to my friends and complain and make sure I'm not judged. Sheffield is where like I can cry at night with my friends and no one would say anything, or where like I can have home food basically through Arab Society, Egypt Society, Egypt Society, and so much more. So I believe like through incorporating in many different events, activities, and so much more, I've achieved that. And I would say basically this is what I want to implement with the international representatives, is that they'd make people feel like home, because the transition going from for me, going from Egypt to here was such a hassle. I did not know anyone. I came from a completely different background, different rules, different standard, ethics, everything. I was so alone. And when I first made my friends, this made me feel like, oh, okay, I can make home here as well. I'll have 2 homes and that's okay. So I believe this is an important way, and this is something I really want people to feel, because I've seen the hassle of being alone. I've seen how it was to be lonely and like have no one to talk to, face problems, no one's there. And I really don't want anyone to suffer from that, because it's not nice at all. Thank you.
Lily?
Yeah, I think Sheffield University and like SU is a very, very big family. For me, I think we just live in this family. From this point, I think this family is very warm. When I come here in summer, and I just experience many things I didn't think about before. It's very fantastic experience for me. So we just live here, like we got friendship, and also I think if I can promote many like culture events and like some knowledgeable like some history and culture events, and for students they can know more about each other. This is what I think that my aim just include this kind of events and help students know more. I think we just live in a world, but I think many students, they don't know kind of geography. Maybe they just know where their country are, and they don't know where is like Denmark and like this Africa, this kind of part in the world. I have 10 years work experience, so I do something like transportation, and I know some like this kind of knowledge. So I really have a map in my mind. So I really want to hold this kind of activities for them to know about our world. And also, I think we do more about this kind of events. They can know each other and make our family like live in a world. Like my lucky toy is penguin. They just warm together and hum together in the future. Yeah.
Thank you so much. So, when international students finish their time at university, in terms of opportunities and work in the UK, what are the issues and what policies do you have to create a solution? Saya?
So one of my biggest policies is Tier 2 career fairs. As an international student, I don't know what will happen to me after I graduate. I'm a third-year journalism student. All of my training here in the university has been amazing, but it's all UK-based. If I go back to Japan and try and do journalism, they'll be like, you have not received the training for your career, basically. So I think that it's extremely important to give people the option to stay. Not all of us want to stay, but some of us do. And I think that even though we have so many career fairs, career insights day, career pathways, department-based career fairs, a lot of them don't offer Tier 2 sponsorship. And that's crucial, because Tier 2 visas are extremely expensive and they're time-consuming. That's a lot of red tape in negotiating with the Home Office, and there's not even a guarantee that you'll get the Tier 2 visa, even if you apply. So I think that having a career fair with graduate schemes and companies that specifically sponsor Tier 2 visas is essential, so that people who want to stay can stay. And I think that's a relatively easy thing to do, because when I do my personal research, there are companies out there that are willing to give out Tier 2 sponsorships. It's just a matter of gathering them all together in maybe the Octagon or maybe the Firth Court building, and getting international students the option to stay.
Thank you.
Yeah, for like international students, there have a new policy about the a 2-year post-study work visa. It means that international students complete their program of studies, and they can have the 2 years chance to live here to find a job. And if they find appropriate job, they can stay in the UK. And I think it's a really good opportunity for international students, because really I chat with international students. Some of them really want to stay here and to find a job and to increase their working experience. But how to catch this opportunity to do some things for international students? We have job shop and we have career service, but how many international students to use this service from our student union and from this department? And we receive, and I think we can also link to the department, because we want to find like relevant jobs related to our course. So I think link to the department and my job shop and career service provide more opportunities for international students to boost their CV or mock interviews to increase their experience to how to find the job and how to do the interview and something. I think is the best way to provide opportunity for international students to provide informations and more information and they get and they will try and try. Thank you.
May I ask the exact question again, please?
Yeah, of course. So when international students finish their time at universities, in terms of finding opportunities and work in the UK,
Yeah.
what are the issues and what policies do you have to create a solution?
Oh, when people work in the UC, I think I have joined like career service. There are lots of fantastic service like amend your CV, like that stuff. But I think most important thing is there's lots of students, especially for international students, they don't know how the policy is. They afraid to try out. So it would be much more helpful if to invite like some senior students who already have an internship and to have a like buddy up program like this. That would be great. Like as you know, like if I was like international student, another international student also get the visa and work here, and what's the whole process, which they can have a chat and help each other. So that would be great to have a buddy up program like this.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Yuri, in your manifesto, it says when you finish university, there's extra time to use university
Yes.
access services as well.
Yes, exactly. So yeah, I'm going to include that in my answer. So first thing, I think that Saya's idea is brilliant. I'm sure that whoever gets selected will also like get like the best ideas that are presented here, and this is brilliant. A tier 2 visa, a tier 2 visa fare, right? That's incredible, really good. Non idea of mine actually is as good as this. This is really good. I think this is really important. Another thing that I think it's important to understand though is that many people don't know what tier 2 is. We still, the visa terms are very complicated, and I think that we need to bring awareness to that. So once again, this can be in a web page with support where you will understand this information in your language with terms that are used in your language, because then you can understand what are the process, what are the restrictions, especially now that the borders are actually getting even tighter. It's important for us to know exactly what is forbidden and what is possible to be done. But then also, of course, one of my main policies, which I think is relevant for both international and home students, is that I want university access extension for the summer after you graduate. If you take a look at your U card right now, you will see that it expires in June on the year of your graduation, and I think that that's not nice. It means that once that the last exam of the university happens, you lose access to the IC. You lose access to the facilities of your department, and once you graduate, once you have your ceremony of graduation, you lose access to your university email, to the university account, to all your work done at university. So I think that this is not nice. We could have at least a summer to prepare for the next step in your lives using the university facilities. I think that we really need this preparation. We pay so much, all of us, home and especially international students, we pay so much to be here that there is no reason why we can't use these facilities for the summer.
Thank you. Hania?
I agree with Yuri, and like I basically incorporate those ideas. Specifically, I have one of my policies is that I want to interact with the career service to form international workshops for post-graduation employment. Recently, there has been like decision taken that international students tier 4 visa could be extended for 2 years, allowing students to gain more employment, opportunities. However, as a matter of fact, it's very hard for international students in the UK to gain access to employment. And I feel like one way we can do that is through interaction with the career service. They provide workshops. We get a lot of workshops about employment and everything, but they mainly focus on like British students, how do British students deal with employment and everything like that. And when I had an issue with my visa once because of that, and I went to my like head of department and I was like, hi, I have a problem, and they were like, we really don't know what to do. So I went to international students office and I told them I have a problem with my visa, it does not work, and like it does not work, but like my dates are not corresponding, and they were like, we don't know what to do. And I was left like all alone, and I had problems, and if I went back home I wouldn't be able to come back. So basically this like made a problem with my how would I get jobs, because I was aiming for a placement. And in specifically talking about placements, they provide great opportunities for students, those doing industrial years. It's amazing, and many international students actually get placements, but at the end not many international students can stay, like even like when even doing like an placement applications and everything. I have a friend who came and like approached me and was like, they told me literally into his face that they would prefer, they have to take like home students right before and like seeing international students. And I believe this is unfair because at the end we pay a lot, we pay so much, like we should get an opportunity. And therefore I believe we should like get workshops or incorporations that help us understand how to use our visas, especially after the extension. No one knows what to do basically. So.
Thank you, Lily.
Yes, actually, I have the same idea. I need to do some like hold some workshop for students. But for me, I have some details idea because I got another postgraduate in China. I learned something about business management. And you know, in China, we have very important like a graduate students circle. Some students just graduate from this university also have connected with the students in school. I think this is good way. I'd like to just invite many experienced students come back and to do some workshops for students because they got job. You know, they have experience to face different like officer, human resources people in different companies, and they have experience not only just in schools like some tutors to do some interviews for you, but I think they have different like a very personal experience. I'd like to do some workshop like for first month, I'd like to ask them to do some like tell you how to do the CV. And secondly, I'd like to ask them to teach you how to do an interview, face different people, you know how to do that because I have work experience. I know this is much more important, especially for students who graduate from this university because they learn something, they need to turn the knowledge into their jobs. So this is very important thing. So I think people who had experience, this is a very good way for students to promote their like real ability, and they can tell you something. You can learn from internet, you can learn from teacher, you can learn from like books. So you just learn something very, very real and authentic knowledge. You can know how to do that in your future workplace. Yeah.
I may just add something to what Hanya said. Is that
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Hanya mentioned that the tier 2 now, the tier 4 students can stay for 2 years after they graduate. But this only includes students that arrived this year. This doesn't include us. This doesn't include overseas like us who have been here already. We actually, our visa expires 4 months after we graduate. And I think that many people don't know, but part of the international officer jobs is meeting with all the international officers, with all the Students Union. And I think that we could have put together, not anymore, I think it's too late, but we could have put together a movement with the different SUs in order to try to fight that. And I think that it's important to know that we do have the power if we all get united and the different SUs get united. And this is part of the international officer job.
And I also want to add one point that's lots of international students, they don't have any work experience in UK. And it's not only about after graduates, it's before graduates, a school should provide opportunities which suit for international students. Welcome here. I'm not very good at speaking English. I just begin at like film movie, not so much lines. And yeah, we can provide this opportunity, especially for international students. If I could email this, and this suits for you, and you can do this one by one, step by step, and then you can try to find a job, get a visa, and that would be much helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So in 30 seconds, what is your favorite policy that you're most excited for?
I'm excited for my multilingual international students hotline. It will be a place where people can go when they're feeling uncomfortable. Even today, I was walking down the street and I coughed and then someone covered their mouth, and that kind of thing happens every day. And international students really don't have a place where they can just go to quickly when something like that happens. And the key is making it multilingual, because when you're in a stressful situation, if your first language is not English, it's difficult to convey your feelings in the English language, because Nightline exists, but we need something that's multilingual so that people can actually have support. And that's one of my manifesto ones I'm excited about.
Thank you. You as well, Helen, in 30 seconds?
Yeah, because I think like what I excited about is my policy is about like management of SEO service and library systems, because I think we as you present to do it's about EU card. I think we can combine with EU card to promote everything like in student union service to like reduce waiting time. If you want to do something just like doing online and you just don't want like go to the student union or just like it's quite waste of time. And also like manage on library system to solve the SIS problems during exam times. I think it's also like good for international students. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Yeah. What thrilled me the most is what I mentioned before, as I will fight for free day trips. And there was also another point I want to argue for tuition fee refunds during strikes. There are lots of strikes recently. It's quite annoying. And it's also can like the strikes. Why not move some funds to for the free day trips, and we can just increase our university like the reputation, and yeah, so that's my policies. Yeah, it's just fight for free day trips and argue for tuition fee refunds. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Yuri.
Okay, I'll try to be brief. Two things. First, I'm really excited for the International Silent Disco. I think that would be an amazing idea. People could go and listen to the music from their own area of the world. That would be really nice. And you can go and listen to music from other countries. This would be amazing. But I'm also excited to actually bring true change. So I think that I talk a lot about curriculum decolonization. I think that this is something really important to bring the discussion about. And I also think that we should fight for better choices of payment for international students. This is something that can really change people's lives, can make more people come to the university that actually don't have the financial advantage that we do. So yeah, two things: the International Disco and bring real change for the university.
Thank you, Hania.
I'm also excited for two things, but I'd say what I would prefer is the additional scholarships and funding, because international students pay a lot, maybe double the home students pay, and with everything that's happening and strikes and everything, we feel like we're losing our money. So basically, with additional scholarships and funding, we could allow students more to gain valuable education, but like they would have payment schemes, additional payment schemes and everything. It doesn't have to be like that they would have reductions. That's not what I mean, but at least they'd have more payment scheme options rather than paying at once or like in two halves, because the money is a lot and not all families can afford to pay that. Since we're personally funded, we're like in most cases, most international students are. So that's something I believe is very important, to allow more students to be recruited to the university. And something else I'm excited about is which I mentioned in my manifesto, is I really look forward to get in contact with the board of the university to try and implement a new a University of Sheffield branch somewhere else in the world, in a developing country. Recently in Egypt, we had the University of Coventry open up, which was very exciting, and this what I want to do in other developing countries as well.
Thank you, Lily.
Yeah, I just have ideas about that, about jobs. I really care about students who want to find jobs in UK, because with the 2 years visa, this is very good opportunity for them. And secondly, I also like to just hold many events for students involved in this kind of activities, and so also do as a platform for societies, and students do as a bridge for them to just go to different kind of activities and just make their university life colorful and unforgettable.
Thank you so much. This has been your last debates of the 2020 SU Council debates. We have been joined by our international officers, and now we're throwing it back to Panditri.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And that was our international student officer debate. Very well, a lot to talk about there, a lot of candidates. Guys, what stood out to you out of all those people?
I think Saya and Yuri stood out like the most. They had amazing policies, and their manifestos were airtight, and it was just really good. And it was really good to hear from like so many different people. I think we have 6 candidates.
Yeah.
7 running, 6
7
stand up.
Yeah. And I agree. I think Helen also had some good things to say, promoting SU services and just making sure international students are aware of what's already out there, along with the new things that have been suggested by like Saya and Yuri and others.
Definitely some really strong contenders this year. Amanga, you're an international student yourself. What do you think has been missed over the last few years of your studies here? And what do you think you resonated with the candidates talking today?
Well, I definitely resonated with Saya's story about being a third-year journalism student and not knowing what to do. I'm in my master's now, solve that crisis. Now the crisis is coming up, but we'll work on that later. So, like, just the complete uncertainty when it comes to your visa. Like, I've lived in Sheffield 4 years now. I've been trained in UK journalism, and and I've made my home here. I have my roots here, and to know, like, I don't know what my future is going to be like because of the Tier 2 visa, because it's so hard to get a job. And I think her policy of like having a separate careers fair for Tier 2 students is incredible, and I wish that I'd have that, because it would be so helpful to a lot of international students.
Definitely. I think a lot of the candidates did mention a workshop for getting your visa and what to do after you graduate. Do you think that's something that needs to be done? And do you think that Saya, out of all the candidates, probably put that through the most?
Yes, definitely. I think having that sort of training to how to be an adult once to because moving to university for domestic students, it is a big step. Moving to a different country where you don't know anyone, you're coming to a different system. The language is different. The different culture, you have different cultural barriers. Even like taking out the bins, like in Qatar, we don't have recycling. They're working on that now, but we don't have recycling there. So coming here and like what are blue bin days? Why is the bin blue? Like I
Yeah.
didn't know that, and having workshops like that would have really helped.
I was going to say, because quite a lot of people touched on culture shock, and I think just one port of call for everything, like taxes. I'm just going to say this would be helpful for literally everyone. Like my flatmates now don't know how to take out the bins, not a clue how to take out the bins. Asking how to do taxes, like where do I go for this? Where do I go for this? I think that's just not only helpful for international students, it's literally helpful for anyone who comes to the university, like from day zero, like how to sign up to the doctors, where you can go for support, everything like this. I feel like those things do get told and they do get taught to you like throughout your course at university. But I think from day zero, especially if you're an international student, you may feel very overwhelmed
Absolutely.
and don't know half like of the stuff that is out. So I think just making that information very clear from the day you get to university is quite a good policy.
And it's also information that you can refer back to. So if you're stumped about something, you can always go back to the website and just be like, okay, let me type that in. The information's there. I can see it. I can absorb it and just live my life, which is great.
So do you think what the policies around workshops for like visas and again registration for the NHS, taxes, do you think that this will really like home in on the home students as well as international students? And do you think that they should be implementing this? I think Hania mentioned cooperating with the education officer. Do you think this should be an all-round thing implementation?
Yeah, definitely. I think coordination with the different student union officers is crucial as well, because at the end of the day, it's international students and students. We all go through the same courses. We all belong to the same union, and our experience are different, but they should not be separate. So I think having the coordination with welfare officers, with education officers, with the women's officers, sports officers, is crucial.
Yeah, absolutely. Also, what do you think has been missed out of manifestos? Obviously, we don't have all the time in the world to talk about their policies, but things that perhaps haven't been mentioned in the debates, what do you think you'd like to give special mentions to?
I think just sort of the budget and the logistics of how each thing is going to work, because a lot of things proposed, I mean, some of them are very easily like feasible into the budget, like a silent disco and things like that. But say changing the website so that each student has an international translation of things like that. Like money goes into changing websites, money goes put into putting these policies. And I think no one really had a concrete example of how they were going to integrate their policies into the SU.
Yeah, it's like the annual like manifesto thing to put on is the SU app. It's been mentioned for years now and still hasn't been implemented. It's always been in the works. So I guess the same thing would happen with the new single point of access. But the fact that it's been proposed for the first time, I think it's good. And it's good to have a starting point, and it would be incredibly helpful.
Definitely. What about, would you like to give any special mentions to things that you've seen that should be mentioned again? I think Yuri's website, I think, is quite a big thing that he had going for him. Do you
Yeah.
think all his points were brought to light, or
Not all of his points. I would have really liked to see him talk about his subtitling objective, which was to have speech recognition software to subtitle on recorded lectures. So you can listen to your lectures in Mandarin and Arabic, in Spanish and Hindi even. So using already available speech recognition software to subtitle lectures would be so good, because for example, in my degree, that we have a majority of international students, and most of them, they translate what the lecturer is saying and alongside 67 PowerPoint slides in a 2-hour lecture in real time. And that's a lot of information to take in, translate, put down, take notes. It's near impossible, and it makes doing their degree incredibly difficult. So I think having that facility where subtitles are there, where they don't have to worry about translation, really takes off a lot of the burden.
I think Jack also mentioned about language assistance, and I think that for some people is really needed before they start university with, you know, puncture, grammar, everything like that, are things that may be completely different to their home country that they may need to get taught before they reach university. Well, at university would be the best place to do it at the very start. Workshops put in place, so everything that is concrete.
Okay, as well as the academic part of their campaign, they have a very social heavy aspect too, which of course is needed. What was your opinion on Lou's policies on the different kinds of parties being history, culture, international in general?
I think that's good, but it's sort of already building on what's already been done. Like Sissy did the Christmas ball. I think they're starting to put in more events, and I feel like just more awareness is needed to build upon some more, because obviously that's all great and everything like that, but within each society I know there's been lots of, you know, international balls and things like that already going on, so I don't think it's much new, but that's not to say it's a problem to, you know, have more, make it bigger, make it better.
Yeah, the more the merrier, they say. Very cliche, I'm sorry. But there's also a global cafe where students can come in and like and like have a chat and like have a chance to make friends. I think it's just more opportunities to reduce loneliness in international students, because it can be very isolating. But at the same time, there are different things that I think she should have focused her manifesto on, more on academics, more on visas, because that's the things that are pressing. Because again, the curriculum talk coined a new term there, but most curriculums come from route learning. I wasn't taught what referencing is. Like essays were just like writing a letter to a pen pal, or like writing up a wedding invitation. All actual assessments. I was assessed on these. So it's like and coming and facing that like shock with education. It's like, oh, what is a critical analysis? What is plagiarism? What are these big words? And sort of like, how do I approach it? And again, I think some of the candidates talked about the confusion in grading as well. What is a 2-1? What's a third? Because like where I come from, a 75 is like below average. And over here, it's like, it's so hard.
Honestly, 75 is like the best thing I've ever seen in my life.
I know.
But I see
would
that
love
come
a
up.
75. Feel that. So another thing building on this, when it comes to education, it's also getting along with your course mates. And you said that group projects can be quite hard sometimes too. Helen herself includes a lot about cultural integration. What are your views on this, and how necessary do you think is needed?
I think the buddy mentoring scheme is absolutely great, because I myself, I know if I would be happy to do it, just to sort of integrate people into the course more, because I know it tries not to be, but sometimes it can be that in lectures, you know, some people are sort of set opposite ways, and it isn't until like tutorials or group projects that you end up working together. But I feel like just integrating at the very start, just in socials and things that isn't so academic heavy, can really make the academic process a lot easier.
Yeah, because with group projects, there's always that awkwardness, and you just sort of either end up being the only person speaking, or just the person quiet, not knowing when to like speak up. So having that sort of social and having that buddy system to remove the awkwardness from the start, and sort of having like starting a relationship, it could be acquaintance, it just could be friendship, who knows, but then sort of removing that barrier, that's like, should I speak up, should I not, would they think I'm a terrible person or not, like removing that anxiety is very important.
Same with the pen pal policy, just having someone to not necessarily see all the time, but just someone as a port of call who is just happy to talk to you if you're just something like, you know, just to talk about British things or things that you just have no clue about, and not feel embarrassed to ask about it, because that's completely fine.
Definitely. Obviously, this all seems quite feasible, but what about any policies that strike you as unrealistic? One that I don't think was mentioned during the debates, but Hania wants to reach a settlement with the university to open other branches in several developing countries, which obviously is a brilliant goal, but do you think this could be achieved?
I think that one is particularly hard to achieve, just because you have to sort of, you know, speak internationally there, and that's a lot of money involved just for something that's for our SU. I think Yuri's policy was just to extend membership through the summer. I think that would just be great to receive more support from the university that we have at the minute. I think just refining the services that we have now before extending elsewhere might be a better suggestion.
Definitely, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, yeah. And what about something that's been touched upon time after time? Jack has mentioned about microwaves and hot water.
Oh.
And I know, George, you're a big fan of this
Oh.
policy. How feasible is it? Again, time after time, it's been brought up by several different welfare development, education, it's all been brought up. Do you think this could be the candidate to implement
Right.
it?
I have several things to say about this. I think that a microwave may be not doable just because it's sort of like cleaning services. Like, I don't know if it was in a library, I don't know about the noise or like where it could be. I think the queue would be like outrageous. And you have also got to think that money that people spend on meal deals and stuff like that, it does go back into the university. And it is your personal choice if you want to go out and buy food. Like, I agree, like, I want hot food and I would absolutely love it if there was a microwave on campus. But I do appreciate that by me spending money to buy a hot meal, at the SU or, at the IC or the Diamond, that money is going straight back into the university or straight back into the SU. So I do appreciate that. Hot water taps, however, I think because you're allowed to ask for hot water at the Diamond or the IC anyway, I don't see why it can't be extended in the budget for a hot water tap, because that people who may not feel comfortable enough to just go and ask for hot water, and that may sound silly, but some people won't. Some people just think, oh, you know what, I don't want to bother them. Like, they're busy, they're making loads of coffees. Like, I don't want to come in and not buy anything and, use a hot water tap. So I think that could be implemented somewhere.
Yeah, there's already a hot water tap available in the SU, so I shouldn't see why it can't be extended over to the IC kitchen and the Diamond kitchen. But then again, it's the question of their offices representing the Students Union and the university is separate. So maybe they can ask for it, maybe lobby for it, but again, up in the air,
Yeah, definitely. Another key point that's been mentioned by Saya is the idea of having international students protected emotionally and physically against violence. How do you think this will be done? And do you think perhaps this was lacked in other candidates' manifesto?
I think this was an incredible point in her manifesto. I think she mentioned having a separate hotline for international students where they can just call it up anonymously if they feel threatened or if they feel that their safety is being compromised. And I think it's really good because most of us come from very diverse backgrounds. There are different issues affecting the world, like, for example, Hong Kong and China issue. Israel and Palestine has been going on for years now, and India and the Kashmir issue with Pakistan. So all of these, you have to make sure that every single student, regardless of their nationality, regardless of their background, feels safe and doesn't feel threatened and is not exposed to abuse of any form, and having that hotline where they can cut the red tape and just talk to someone that can help, instead of going from email to email to email to email and just feeling discouraged and stopping. I think it's very, very important.
I think this could just be extended, like upon Nightline, just an extension of
Right.
this. And just to have that, specialist support from, someone who does know more about international students. So it's not just like someone's coming in and trying to attempt to help on maybe an issue that they might not be able to help with. So maybe just international representatives on that side may be a good thing to implement.
Yeah, like student volunteers who speak the language, because the language barrier could be a big deterrent for many students.
Okay, and what about experience for all the candidates? We have Lou's worked in China for over 10 years. Hani has been an academic rep, tutor and secretary for the Arabic Society. And obviously, Saya mentioned her various accolades too. How vital do you think this experience is to stand up to this role?
I think experience is always a bonus to every candidate, but at the same time, they should be willing to work with different people, since it's an international student officer position.
I think just enthusiasm and obviously a little support, a little bit of, experience goes a long way, but that just enthusiasm and commitment to your role is just really what you need to show.
And who would you guys pick for your top pick?
I think for me, it has to be Saya.
For me, it's Yuri. Yeah.
Oh, we'll have to wait and see.
TikTok.
So next Thursday is results night, and you can join Forge TV for their live stream and Forge Radio for our live broadcast. You can stay tuned for a lot more on Forge Press, and there's going to be plenty more coming. Thank you so much.